actually the up-and-coming SQL Saturdays. I'm actually the leader for the Austin one, so if anyone's in the Texas area, I'd love to meet you in person. But there's also a lot of great SQL Saturdays across the country and the globe. Also, if anyone is interested in volunteering at all with PASS, it's easy to sign up. All you have to do is go to your My PASS dashboard and click on the volunteering section. There'll be a lot of options for you to volunteer. If you know of any people you would like to be acknowledged as outstanding volunteers, you can also do so by emailing volunteerrecognition@sqlpass.org. Also, if you want to stay connected with PASS, PASS is all over social media. You can access PASS via LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, or its actual website. And then finally, we'll get started with today's meeting. Today, Brandon Leach is going to be presenting about introduction to log shipping. Brandon's been working for a long time in the health network area, and I know Brandon's also highly involved with the Boston SQL Server user group. And with that, Brandon, we'll go ahead and we'll kick it over to you.
All right, sounds good. Just need to share my screen again and perfect. So the first thing everyone's probably seeing is that cow, the hare. But let's get this started again. So thank you all for coming. It looks like we've got 34 folks here. So I guess some of you, from what John tells me, have been looking for a log shipping presentation for a little while. So I threw this one together quick. We're going a large chunk of this. I want to get through the slides fairly quick because I want to get to actually building it out and showing you how you implement it. So that's where I like to spend the bulk of time. But if you all have questions, just send them out, and I will. They'll get periodically curated to me, and I will be happy to answer them as we go along. So, a little bit about me. I work for a company called Network Health. Well, our name just changed. We are now Tufts Health Plan Network Health. Soon we will be Tufts Health Plan Public Plans, hence why I didn't have any business cards at PASS. So you can find me on Twitter under SQL Server Nerd. I also have been, as John mentioned, deeply involved with the Boston user group. We are one of the oldest and largest groups. At the meetup site, we have 785 members. I've also run the Providence SQL Saturday for 2 years. I founded that one and handed that off to John Miner earlier this year. Since then, I've also been involved with 2 SQL Saturdays in Boston, and we've got our third coming up there. In addition, if anyone knows a site called thedailywtf.com, I am a forums admin on there. Yes, it is my job to make sure you don't post information that can be used to identify your companies when you post all the horrible stuff that you've seen. Anyways, on to the meat and potatoes. Log shipping. It's one of the simplest, I mean absolute simplest DR offerings that SQL Server provides. In fact, all it really is backup and restore. We're taking the backups from one system and we're periodically restoring them onto another system, or possibly several other systems. Now, we can do this for more than just DR. You can do it for reporting. There are some things to note in both those cases, however. So you're going to find most of these slides are bullet points because we're going to move straight into actually implementing here. So yes, you get DR. Yes, you're actually doing restore, so you are testing your backups. I hope you're all testing backups of your critical servers. If you're not, well, you don't know if they'll restore. Another thing we actually use in my environment, and I've got 200 plus database servers sitting here in my company, and we oftentimes will actually use log shipping to offload some of the queries, the read-only queries specifically, to a separate server. That means operational can stay operational. You also get to control things like when, how often the data is synced. It's a pro, it's a con. It will actually, it's not real time, so it's not like replication. And if you need real time, then you need something like replication or database mirroring. It's also extremely stable. Once you get it set up, it doesn't actually break that often. It can break if, you know, that backup chain that it depends on is broken. So someone comes in, a developer takes a backup, and it's not a copy-only backup of the database. If they do, you should hunt them down and beat some sense into them. No offense, developers. So, limitations. Well, failover is not really automatic with log shipping. So if you go and you think that, you know, oh, in the event of a disaster, it'll only be 30 seconds or whatever. Nope. It's going to wait till you physically repoint it. I already mentioned the real-time thing. Also, you're going to have to update your applications. Now, if your developers are smart and they're aware of the log shipping implementation, they can actually build into their own apps automatic checking for that. You know, server goes down, their app sees it, doesn't see it anymore, so they try the failover and they see what the status is on that. So, yeah, I mean, there are workarounds, but if you need, like I said, if you need the real time, you need automatic failover, log shipping is not what you want. So, when we create our reporting instances here, we're often using log shipping. We also use it as a way of just quickly shipping over our production systems to our production ops systems to our data warehouse as well. We have multiple syncs that occur throughout the day. It varies between systems. Some have 5. Some only are synced every 12 hours. The thing is, when you sync, what you're really doing is you're doing a restore operation. So while the restores are running, the database actually can't be read from. But once it is synced, the database goes into standby read-only, and then we're able to actually do our reporting queries. You have multiple options. You can tell it to just to go into no recovery, meaning just stand there, wait for the next log, or to go into standby, which means the data is readable. We'll get into that a little more when we actually get into the meat and potatoes here. Failover, as I mentioned, manual process. Clients have to be redirected. All you need to do, though, is restore the last of your logs and use with recovery, and the database will come up as the new primary. However, you're generally going to follow your same backup process. So, you know, if you can take a tail of the log backup off the old primary, it is accessible, great. You can get back all your data. If you can't, well, you know, you might lose whatever hasn't been backed up to disk yet. Another important consideration is you want to make sure all your logins are reproduced on the secondary in the case of failover. The reason for this is, well, you want your users to be able to access, correct? So whenever we set up a log shipping configuration, we actually do this on the secondary from the get-go. So we know they're there. All the logins are the same. If we add one to the first server, we know it's a log ship server, so we'll also add it to the secondaries. Now, one important thing to note here too is that with your users, your database users and logins are not the same thing. Logins are server level and they're mapped to users in each database. So for reporting, if you need to give a user permission to that database on a secondary, you're going to have to look at either adding them in or mapping. So typically you're going to add them in on the primary there, and then they're going to get brought over, and maybe you'll just find some other workaround. But my point is there are security considerations. Before I go to the next slide, do we have questions? I'm going about 10 minutes.
Right now we've got a comment that non-copy only database backups won't break log shipping. So can you confirm,
Yes.
deny?
That is true. If it is a copy-only backup, it won't break your chain.
Okay, well the comment is non-copy only database backups.
I haven't seen that. Here's the thing. The backup chain, if it's a full, it won't. But if someone comes along and takes that log, it will. So yes, there is kind of that. Sorry for the confusion. It took me a while to process.
Cool.
But yes, no, taking a full shouldn't just break it immediately.
Okay, cool.
It's if you lose one of the logs and you're out of sync.
Yeah, no problem. Sounds good. Okay, and that's the only question so far.
Awesome. So, next slide. One of the big things we actually use log shipping for in my environments is migrations and upgrades. If we're migrating to new servers, new VMs, or physical, or we're upgrading versions of SQL Server, we'll actually use log shipping. What we'll do is we'll set it up, we'll set up the log shipping, and then just let it do those periodic restores. Then, when it comes time to mind you, this is all after testing. I should clarify that. After we test the new environment, we'll copy the database over. And we're saying upgrades to SQL Server itself, not to application upgrades. Those are different. But we'll set up log shipping ahead of the go-live date. And from there, what we'll do is we'll let the periodic restores run. That way, all we have to do when we're doing our cutover is restore the last of those logs. We do one final sync operation. And then we know we've got the latest data. This is much faster than, attach, detach, or a full-blown backup and restore. We might only have a few hours to get a heavy system up, a couple terabytes. So, when time's limited, this can save you time. You can also use database mirroring for that as well. But that's how we handle those. In fact, we've got one coming up this weekend, which I completely forgot about. So let's talk about the components a little bit. And thankfully, we're almost close to the end of the slides, and we'll actually start building this out. So you have a few components, and you've obviously got your primary. You've got that's your source server. You've also got your at least one secondary, maybe more. And I mean, sky's really the limits with secondaries with log shipping, because all it is a backup and restore operation. You've also got 4 jobs that get loaded into SQL Agent. You'll have on the primary, you'll have a backup and an alert job. The alert job is, the backup's obvious, but the alert job is going to tell you if a backup hasn't been taken in, X amount of time. Then on your secondary, you're going to have copy and restore jobs and an alert job. So the copy job, its focus is to actually pull the log files local. The restore job is actually going to apply those logs to the database. And alert, well, you're going to know if it hasn't been able to, restore, or if files haven't been copied, etc. on the secondary. So you'll find an alert job on both servers. You'll find the backup on the primary, and then copy and restore on the secondary. There's another component, too, the monitor server. So there are tables in MSDB when you're using log shipping that will get populated with data on your source and destination. But what if you've got, multiple secondaries? Do you really want to go to all of those secondaries to look at that information? Well, the monitor server, which is optional, it's not required, will actually, if you set it up, the data will get sent to that one central location. So you can look at everything in one place as opposed to having to bounce around between servers. Really, really useful, especially when you've got a lot of log shipping implementations. So anyways, let me close out of the slides here. And let me bring you back to the cow so I can actually go and say, so can you guys see my management studio?
Yeah, it's looking good.
Perfect. So I guess now is a good chance to check for any questions quickly.
Right now we don't have any. If you do have any, please go ahead and enter them in the questions section they'll pop up to the right there, and we'll be sure to get them answered.
Perfect. All right, so what I've got is two servers here. Now they're a bit old. They're SQL 2008 R2, but not much has changed with log shipping since. So, because like I said, log shipping is one of those things that really just kind of works. You might have to prod it a little bit, but once it's set up, it's fairly stable. So I've got two servers. I've got Test Sandbox 1 and I've got Test Sandbox 2. These all have some sample databases on here. So if I go and expand that, you'll see a whole bunch of stuff. You'll see AdventureWorks, some sample presentation systems, some junk. And in fact, one of these databases is already log shipped, but I created a new one just so we can walk through the process of actually building it out. So we've got log shipping tests. Currently, there are no tables in this database. So I believe if I just move this so I can actually see it. Okay. If I go, that's on 2, so I'll start a new one on 1. All right. So we're going to set ourselves to log shipping test here, and we're just going to create a quick table. And this is going to be a simple table. And it's just going to have an int column called ID. Just so that we have a structure in there. So we'll do that. Now obviously if I refresh the tables here, you'll see it. Okay, dbo.symbol. There's no data in there. And that's intentional. So what we're going to do now is we're going to set up log shipping. So to do this through the GUI, you can right-click, go to the properties right here, and off to the left under select a page, we'll see transaction log shipping. I'm going to move this over a little bit so that it doesn't conflict with GoToMeeting. Now, the first thing we have to do is we have to check this box. Yes, this is going to be the primary. So we're going to do this on our primary. Now, we obviously, I'm assuming most people, not all of you pretty much, actually have backups already running in your environment. You can actually use those. So let's go here, and we have to specify a path. Now, in our case, this server is just a junk test server. It doesn't actually get backed up, so I have to set up a backup. So, I've got a path called C:/backup. And I've also got, I'm also going to use that same path here because it's local. It's not a network path. We're going to delete files older than 72 hours. We're going to alert if there is no backup that occurs within an hour. So using this, we can make sure that these two options, we can make sure that the folder doesn't go out of control and that we get alerts if there's an issue with the backup. So here we've got the name of the job, so that's configurable, and the schedule. So one thing I am going to do here is I am going to go and actually make sure there's nothing in that folder already. If it will, okay, yeah, I'll figure that out later. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to set our backups to occur daily, every, say, 1 minute, right? Now, we're not going to specify an end date. We're going to click OK. Now, obviously, for log shipping to work, we're going to have to be in full recovery model. We can't be in simple, basically. We have to be in the full recovery model because we have to be taking log backups because those are what's applied. So, I'm going to click OK. It's doing every 1 minute. Oh, I typed that wrong. Sorry, and the top one I realized. Yeah, okay. There we go. My apologies, folks. So, now if I click OK, we can move on to the next step. Now, the next step in this process, well, before I do that, do we have any questions?
Right now, the only question is on the left-hand column with the listing of databases, what's the green database there, the DBA database?
Okay, so that is a database that is in source control.
Sweet. Cool. And
yes,
that's it.
So, yeah. This is one of my personal test servers. We have ones for each version that we use. And that particular one is just a source control database. So that's why it's green. There's a third-party tool that does that.
Okay, cool. And that's all the questions so far.
All right. So anyways, the next step going through this GUI is to add a secondary server, at least one. So we click Add, and it brings us to this wonderful box. Now, obviously, it looks like everything is grayed out. So what we have to do is we have to connect to a server. So I'm going to do just that. Normally, I would hope you guys are actually dealing with Windows authentication. We use it just on we use SQL authentication just on our sandboxes so that you guys don't necessarily see domain and all that fun stuff. Anyways, so once we connect, we can either keep the name and have both databases have the same name, that's the most common, or we could actually change this. We're going to keep the name. We're also going to go, and just so you know, this database does not exist on Test Sandbox 2 yet. This process is actually going to do it. So I'm going to go with the first option. I'll discuss what they are in a moment. Fortunately, those are only one volume servers, so we're not really going to be able to, everything's got to be on the C drive. So please forgive that sin. So the first option basically will actually initialize, it'll take a full backup, and then it will restore it onto the secondary. That brings them into sync because they're both at the same point. You can also choose to use an existing backup if you've taken it manually, or you can tell it, well, you've already brought them to the same point. In other words, either Management Studio handles it all, or you take a backup and you tell Management Studio where it is, or you just initialize it yourself. The next tab here, Copy Files, we have to fill in this destination folder. Now, what the copy job does is it's going to pull the backups from wherever they're stored on, wherever you back them up to, it's going to pull them local and then restore them. However, this could also be a network share, or it could even be the same folder. So in our case, we're going to go :/backup. Now, keep in mind, :/backup in this case is on Test Sandbox 2. It's local to Test Sandbox 2. Whereas before, when I entered :/backup, it was on Test Sandbox 1. We're also going to set a threshold for deleting those files we've copied. So again, that folder doesn't go crazy, doesn't go out of control. Now, this, again, you can set this to hours, minutes, days, whatever you want. Keep in mind, this stuff does congregate. In our case, we're doing log backups every 15 minutes. And these can be some hefty log backups. So we try to clear them out of there, out of the copy folder as soon as possible. Again, we'll be asked to choose a name for the job. In this case, I'm going to go with the default. The default is lscopy with the name of the server and then the name of the database. So I'm going to actually change the schedule so we can do some syncs. And we can see it. Not 3. I was in the wrong box. So we don't want to sit here for 3 days while we wait for this, do we? But maybe every 2 minutes will be good. So do that, verify everything. Yep, every 2 minutes. Now, the third thing we have, the third tab here, is where we get to choose whether we just sit in no recovery or whether the database is readable. So we're going to go with standby mode. And it gives us the option here to disconnect users in the database when restoring. Yes, we're going to do that because we don't want it to fail as a result of somebody running a query that they shouldn't. Believe me, it happens. Users are not always the best at adhering to timeframes, even if those timeframes are mandated. So, again, we get some options here for this. We can specify if, no restore has occurred within, in this case, 45 minutes, shoot out an alert. Well, let's set this to 5. So let's click OK here. We can also delay restoring backups, so meaning the time will come, it'll give it a few moments, and then start. So I'm going to click OK, but before I do, I want to point out to disable this job. So some folks, like ourselves here at Network Health, we have external systems that actually handle the backups. Therefore, we don't want to, have the backups run from, log shipping. We don't want that log shipping backup to run. But we want to be able to still take the backup. In that case, we still dump it to a folder, and we just point our other log shipping jobs at it. So that's an example of where you might want to disable. So if I click OK here, we are almost done. Now, unfortunately, I don't have a third instance to use. I'm getting a message about network difficulties. Am I still coming through okay?
Yeah, things are good. We've got a number of questions here whenever you're ready for
them. Let's start off with those.
Okay. First one is, can you use log shipping and its agents just to maintain offsite copies without having to do the rolling restore on the remote machine?
So the restores are inherent. So you're always, if you're using log shipping, you're doing restores. So yes, you can set it up to do as just to have a standby instance in case something happens. So you have something offsite, but you're still going to have to restore those transaction logs. What you can do, however, is you can control how often and when that occurs. The schedule of your copy and restore jobs will determine the frequency of your how often the data syncs.
Okay.
So
for Matt, what I would say is if you're looking to just get these files out of there and onto another machine somewhere for an offsite backup, what I would do is find a way to just replicate a periodic log backup, through rsync or some other mechanism like that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, got another question. Are there any differences in log shipping between SQL 2008, 2012, and 2014?
There aren't, not that I'm aware of, to be honest, but I'm not entirely sure with 2014, but I can check.
Okay. Got another one. Are there any compatibility issues between those versions? So I mean, basically, can you go,
here's the interesting thing.
or can you go both ways with those log backups, or is it basically only rolling forward?
It's only rolling forward, so you can you can log ship, say, a 2012 to a 2014, but you can't do a 2014 to a 2012. See,
Okay.
what's going to happen is the moment it applies that log backup, it's actually going to upgrade the database the moment it comes out of no recovery. So you can't even really use standby at that point. But if you're doing an upgrade and you're going from, say, 2008 R2 to 2014, then you can configure log shipping on the secondary. It will apply the log, and then when you bring the database out of no recovery, it will actually go through a process of upgrading the database for you.
Okay. And then one last question, or actually two. What would you personally like to see in future versions of log shipping, or do you think this is really as good as it's going to get?
I don't really think they're going to develop log shipping much further. I mean, they haven't touched it in years. It's just stable. If there was one thing I would like, it's maybe just, you know, I don't really know what I would like, because it's just, it works. For what it is, it works. I have anything else I would want to do, I would be using other technologies. You know, if I need the real time, I'm going to go to replication. No, I hate replication personally, but you know, if you really need the real time, it's replication, database mirroring, something that gets me a little closer.
Okay. Couple more questions here, and then we'll get back to the demo. We've got Heather would like to do a log backup between batches of deletes. Is there anything special that she needs to do to keep everything happy and stable?
So between batches of deletes, and you just want to you want to take a backup, or you want to actually synchronize?
I'm assuming
you take a backup.
I'm assuming, yeah.
Yeah, that'll be fine. Basically, what happens with log shipping is it's just replaying those transactions. So if you take a log backup, as long as it goes to the right place, the right folder, it'll get copied over. It'll get processed as part of the whole batch.
Okay, cool. We've got a couple more questions here, but we'll go ahead and let you get on with the demo, and we'll get those answered at the end.
All right. Well, I've left plenty of time in here for that demo, or for those questions. So the monitor instance, as I've mentioned, is it's essentially centralized storage for log shipping. You'll find if you go through the MSDB database on your primary or secondary, you'll find information about the history of the jobs. Did they hit errors? Did they fail? Well, you have to look on both places. If you have a problem with log shipping, you're going to have to go to your primary and your destination. The idea behind the monitor server is it's one place. And in fact, if you have multiple log shipping scenarios in your environment, it could be, they can all go to the same place, and you have one resource to view. You're going to have information about alerts, the jobs, history, errors, all sorts of goodies. in there, and it's all stored in the MSDB database on the monitor server. In our case, we're not actually going to set that up here. Also, one thing I want to show you, we're going to actually script the configuration for log shipping. Anything you do, you want to script. Trust me on this. So I'm going to click OK, and that's actually going to kick everything off. It's going to apply log shipping and set it up. And as you can see, everything really fast here. So if I click Close, that window closes. I can now go to Test Sandbox 2, and I can see that right here at the bottom, we've got our database. It's in standby read-only mode. So if we go and look at this quickly, however, we will see that we got the script for our configuration. You may at times need to break log shipping. You may want to rebuild it. Well, if you have the scripts, you have the opportunity to do that. So I'll usually, we'll script it out, we'll save it, put it in source control, attach it to our documentation there, and we're good. So if we need to reapply, we know we're reapplying it the same way. Say we have to rebuild the server for some reason. So anyways, because we put this database in standby, we're actually able to query our data. So I'm just going to open a new query quickly. We're going to go to, and we're going to select, it's only got one column, so we won't have any rows in there, but you see ID. Well, let's go add some data in. So we're going to go back to our primary, and we're going to actually add it in. Into simple, and we're just going to go and we're going to do this 10 times. All right, so we added 10 rows there. Now, within a minute or two, probably two, we should actually see our data come across. Now, we specified 2 minutes for the restore operation, so this may take some time. So what we will do in the meantime is we'll actually look at some of the jobs that we created there. So if I go back to Test Sandbox 1, we'll start there. We are going to go down to SQL Agent, Jobs. So you can see a bunch of junk on here. We've got our job for alerts. We've got our job for backup. You can see I'm actually at 2 logship databases going to the same server here. And that's it. Copy the restore jobs, they're not here. If we go into the properties, the alert, and just look at the steps here, it's a relatively simple job. Just executes this store procedure, which, by the way, as I mentioned, in that case, it's in, let's go to this guy and just show you what's going on here. So this one's the meat and potatoes. Again. So it's actually calling this executable here, SQL logship.exe, and it's generating, this is going to generate the backup. It's then going to place it in the correct place and start the ball rolling on the other end. So hopefully by now we should have our data. Let's see. No, we do not, so I'm going to speed this up. We're going to go to Test Sandbox 2. So first we'll just start the job. It's already done. All right, so now we're going to go up here and we're going to look at the jobs on Test Sandbox 2. We're going to kick off the copy job. That's done. And we're also going to kick off the restore job. We go back here to Sandbox 2. Copy this. I'm missing something here. Do we have any more questions while we go?
Yeah, we've got a couple more here. So a question about why not always on for real time, and I think I can tackle this one with you. Always on availability groups are great for real time, but at the same time, you're dependent on being SQL Server 2012 or above, and you're also dependent on Enterprise Edition. This has been, log shipping's been available for a long time, and you're not limited to Enterprise Edition. So it's really, use what you've got available to you. In this case, maybe you actually do want that delay. I know of one company that uses this. They have the ability to do log shipping and go backwards by an hour in case somebody deletes something and they want to be able to go fetch it backwards. Do you have anything else you want to add, Brandon?
No, you pretty much covered everything there. As you said, availability groups are great, but there's a lot of additional complexity. And why over-engineer? In a lot of cases, you may not need it. This may be a better solution just because you can implement it faster. You're going to have less to worry about.
Exactly. For example, you're not going to be bound by a cluster component that might be stretched across WAN connections and things like that may overcomplicate it. So we do have one more question regarding that previous question about can you do log shipping without the restore. So the restore is done by the SQL agent job. Could we just simply disable that restore job, or would it stop working if that restore is actually disabled?
Well, so here's the interesting thing about log shipping. It's actually, you could just roll your own. And if you disable that restore job, you're going to have to roll your own. The benefit of using the feature in SQL Server is, you follow the GUI, it sets everything up for you. You don't have to write all this stuff yourself. So you could disable that restore, but then your log ship database is never going to get updated. Not unless you manually do it. So.
Okay, cool. And so far, I think that's all the questions.
All right, well, let's view the history for some of these jobs, because one of them errored out. Now, let's see what one and why. Ah, yes, you can see the alert job has been erroring out for a while. Every minute since I set up one earlier. The last step to run was step 1, log shipping. Okay, so where is your error itself? Ah. See, the database is out of sync. No restore has been done for 8 minutes, so that would explain. Let me also see up here, there's another database here called test log ship, and down here it's simply called test. So if I go and I do new query, I pick a table out of here, because this one is also log shipped. Let's look at columns for junk. There we go. Let's truncate the table. One, two, three. So there's one column in there called, or one row in there. We will give that a bit of a wait. I'll say, in the meantime, let's go and see about those jobs. And we can see that it is, yeah, log shipping test. Let's go back to yep. All right, so hopefully in a moment or two that will come over. We can try to speed that up by doing this. We're going to execute here. There it is. Shouldn't take that long. And then we will come over and we will do our copy. And we will do our copy or our restore. All right. Let's go back to Sandbox 2 now. We'll change our database to test log ship. Yeah. And let's see. As you can see, we now have data in there. If I were to try to insert into this, or just truncate it, I'll get an error. And the reason I get that error is because the database is read-only. This also means we can't actually apply any user permissions, any changes to objects within the database. We have to do that on the primary. And then it'll get log shipped over. Do we have any questions at this point?
Okay, right now we got one comment from Ryan Adams, awesome guy. He's saying that the two questions about disabling the restore job, people may be confusing log shipping with essentially a duplicate backup. What we might be able to do with a backup is use the mirror 2 and get a set of full backup stiffs and transaction logs offsite that way directly.
Yeah, that would be a very good option if that's what they need.
Yeah. Other than that, that's all the questions so far.
All right.
Hey, Brandon, did you go over SP Help Log Shipping Monitor, the stored procedure that gives you everything you'd want to see for monitoring, how long it's been for copies, restores?
No, I haven't gone over that, but let me, that's a good point. Let me just pull that up. I recall that, like most of them, should be an MSDB, right? Do you know if it's sys?
It's SP_help_log_shipping_monitor. I believe that one's actually in master.
Yeah, if it's SP underscore, it probably is. Let me double check just to make sure. Yes, SP who is active is part of our, there's actually a few here. There are a few procedures here for in master for the for configuring log shipping. So obviously there are procedures to add, etc. Do you remember off the top of your head, because I haven't used that procedure in a while, because we use a third-party tool now.
Yeah, it's SP help, SP_help.
Yep.
And then _log_shipping_monitor.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Oh.
We use a third-party. We switched to a third-party tool about a year ago, and we do our log shipping now through them. So.
Yeah, you got to flip over to master.
Yeah. Always gets me on the small little things. Okay, here we go. So here's some general information you guys can see. Pull this up. It'll tell you what databases are log shipped. In this case, because we're doing it on the destination, we're going to see, log shipping tests. We're going to see we have two databases here. We're going to get information about what the last copied file was. In this case, it's this. Also, it's been 4 minutes since the last copy for that guy, as well as the last one hasn't had a restore in a while. So yeah, it gives you a whole bunch of good info. If you are using it as your monitor server, I would run this on your monitor. The is primary column will tell you what server is the primary in the log shipping setup. So yeah, lots of good info. We are pretty much at time though. Do we have any last questions?
I think that's about it. There's one question about it being recorded, and yes, it is recorded, and we'll have this posted very soon.
Yeah. If they have questions, feel free to just email me.
Yeah, you want to list your email address here? You can just type it on the screen for this recording.
All right. There we go.
Very cool. Excellent. John, do you have anything else, any other questions or anything else to add?
No, thank you everyone for coming by, and we'll be meeting same second Tuesday, 1 p.m. Next month, and we'll have Edwin going over multi-subnet clustering and availability groups.
It's going to be awesome.
All right, see you all there.
Cool. Thanks again, Brendan. Thanks everybody for coming.
Hey Dave, stick around for a second.
You bet. You bet.
All right.
Okay, I'll go ahead and stop.